Perhaps seeing that my granddaughter, Madison, had not had the omelet, the waitress spoke to me in a strong tone. "You have to make sure you eat what you order." Would you normally say such a thing to a customer? It was useless to snap at her poorly, so I responded with a low posture. "I'm sorry, I think she was just waiting for my order to come." When I apologetically told her, the waitress blew out a breath from her nose, and then walked away. What a person with a bad attitude. I changed my mind and called out to Madison. "Come on, let's eat." Madison, however, remains depressed. "What's wrong?" "It's strange." Then the waitress came to our table again with something. "It's a toy that comes with a child set." She wildly placed the capsule with the toy on the table. When I looked at the waitress's face to see what was going on, she looked at Madison with a faint smile. It was very creepy. Madison must have sensed something, too. "I don't need this." As she said this, she threw the capsule on the table to the floor. Normally, she would never do such a violent thing. "Hey, don't do such a violent thing." Trying to soothe Madison, I tried to pick up the capsule that had been thrown. But at that moment, "Grandma, let's run away," cried Madison, grabbing my arm as I tried to pick up the capsule. When I looked at the discarded capsule, I saw a piece of paper sticking out of it. Something was written. "Grandma." No. Without even hearing Madison's restraint, I looked inside the folded piece of paper and was horrified. One Saturday, I was on my way to my son Colin's house. It was a warm day that made me feel that spring was almost here. "Well, Mom, please take care of her today." As soon as I arrived, my daughter-in-law, Olivia, and Colin left the house together. Once or twice a month, they went to work on Saturdays. "Grandma, what's for lunch today?" After seeing her parents off, my granddaughter Madison gave me an adorable smile. "Let's go out to eat today too." In response to my reply, Madison danced with joy. "My name is Sarah. I will be 63 years old this year." When my son and his wife were busy, I came to take care of Madison. I lost my husband early and spent a lot of time alone, but being able to spend time with my granddaughter was nothing short of a blessing for me. My son, Colin, had always tried not to burden me. He didn't have to worry about me, but since graduating from high school, he'd been working hard. Come to think of it, the first place he worked was a terrible place. As a parent, I realized that that was what was called a black company. He went to work early in the morning every day and came home around the time the date changed. He was a relatively well-built person, but as he continued to live like that, I could see that he was getting gaunt. I couldn't bear to look at him anymore, and I managed to convince Colin to finally decide to leave the job. It had already been 3 years since he started working there. When he left the company, he had some kind of conflict with it, but when he was finally released from it, I was also relieved. I'm temporarily unemployed. Colin felt sorry for me in that way, but it was more painful to watch my child get gaunt physically and mentally. When I told him that, he smiled with a relieved face, saying, "I'm going to think carefully about the next job and make a decision." He'd always been a hard worker, so he continued to look for a job while studying to get a qualification in the genre he was interested in, and finally decided on a new job. I was worried because it happened at his first job, but it seemed that his new job was a surprisingly decent workplace. He came home on time and there was no overtime. Colin seemed to be able to relax emotionally, and went to work every day with a lively look. His abilities were appreciated, and just as he was happily telling me that he had been on the career track, he suddenly said with a serious look, "Actually, there is another important story to be told. I'm sensitive to these things." I was sure he would say he wanted to introduce his girlfriend. "Important story?" I asked, pretending to be absent-minded. "There's a person whom I want to let you see." My hunch seemed to have been correct. Colin had dated several women in the past. I didn't mention it in particular, but it was something that I could notice. But this time, he wanted me to see her for the first time. This mean? "I am always convenient, so let me know when you decide when you bring her along." Although I said it casually, I felt like I was lonely and happy. Later, the woman who came with Colin was a polite young lady. I'd always taught Colin to just say hello properly. So my first impression was perfect. I didn't intend to judge her, but I couldn't help but pay attention to her appearance and behavior. "Nice to meet you, my name is Olivia." She must have been nervous, too, and I could see that her small body was tense. "Nice to meet you, I'm Colin's mother." I thought I had stared at her too much, so I greeted her as cheerfully as possible so that we could relax with each other. Colin let her sit in the living room and wait. While the two of them waited in the living room, I prepared a cup of tea. They were talking in a quiet voice until I brought the tea, but when they saw me, they suddenly became quiet. I said, "Please have it, and put down the tea, thank you," I heard a voice say. But then there was silence for a while. How do the mothers of the world enliven such a situation? I'm confused because it's my first time. Ha! But it's the first time anyone has ever had a time like this. Unexpectedly, I realized something obvious, and I couldn't help but laugh. Ha! Colin and Olivia look at me curiously. "I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous because it's the first time Colin has brought his girlfriend along." I decided to be my natural self. I was sure we would have a long relationship from here. We would be a family. "I'm nervous, too, but we have something to tell you today. It's come. This is the time to listen with a serious face. Mom, we're going to get married." "I guess so. I've already greeted Olivia's parents and they've given us their approval." Saying halfway through, Colin was surprised. Next to him, Olivia was also greeting. I wonder what both of them were panicking about. "Mom." He looked into my face anxiously. As I was thinking what he was doing, something cold dripped on the back of my hand on my lap. What? It took me a while to grasp the situation, but apparently tears were spilling from my eyes. "So sorry. Did I do something?" She met for the first time the mother of the person who was thinking of marrying and was suddenly crying. Olivia's impatience is laughable now, but at the time she must have been quite anxious. Oh, how come? I don't even know why. I cried and laughed, saying that I had no intention of opposing Colin's marriage. Rather, I was happy that he had finally found a way to be happy with someone other than me. These tears should be joyful. But I couldn't deny the feeling that a part of my heart was being taken away. I left my seat, regained my composure, and returned in front of the two of them, but they still had a worried look on their face. I said in a deliberately cheerful voice, "Olivia, I believe in Colin. If you're the one he chooses, you'll be okay no matter what." Olivia seemed to be still waiting for the rest of my words. "Promise me that both of you will have a happy family." I could see Olivia's expression suddenly brighten. "Thank you, Mom. Now, we're done with the formality." With that said, I dug up the roots and asked about the relationship between the two of them and the events leading up to their marriage. While Colin went to send Olivia off, I muttered to myself to my husband's portrait. Colin is getting married. Time flies. I felt that my husband in the portrait smiled. Olivia worked at the same place as Colin and planned to continue working even after she got married. Colin gave off the scent of a suggestion that we live together, but I refused. I didn't want to disturb the two young guys, and I thought this would give me some alone time. I wanted to refrain from either paying attention or being paid attention. The couple decided on a new house within cycling distance of our house, and Colin left the nest. Then time went on, and my granddaughter, Madison, was born. I was amazed at how cute the grandchild was. At the end of Olivia's maternity leave, I confirmed Colin. "Have you decided where to leave Madison?" I was thinking of taking care of Madison if I had a chance. It was not from my good intentions or attention. I wanted to be with Madison. However, Colin seemed to think I was worried, and gave me a disappointing reply, "Mom, don't worry, our company has a daycare center." Colin's new job seemed to be a really respectable, decent company. Is there no chance of my helping? It wasn't until a few days later that Olivia, who was sitting next to Colin and watching the exchange, gave me hope as I shrugged my shoulders. "Mother-in-law, are you free this Saturday?" It was confirmed by phone, and I asked what was the matter because I had nothing to do. "Actually, both Colin and I have urgent work on Saturday, and the daycare center is closed on Saturdays." I replied immediately. "Madison. I can take care of Madison." It was a phone call, but I couldn't help but lean in. "Can I do you a favor?" "No problem." I was about to reply vigorously, but kept my composure. "Yes, it's okay." I was sure my voice would have been raised. Olivia on the other end of the phone also looked happy. Since then, I have been taking care of Madison from time to time, and it has been up to this day. Just before noon, I took Madison outside. As I promised earlier, we walked to a nearby family restaurant. I really wanted to eat at home, but while I'd been taking care of Madison at Colin's house before, I received suspicious calls and pizzas that I didn't recognize, which was creepy. The family restaurant we were heading to was also where I had used to work part-time, and I came to use it often because it was easy to use. When we arrived there, a waitress guided us to a large sofa seat as usual. It was lunchtime on a Saturday, but it was not so crowded. "Madison, what are you going to eat today?" We sat side by side and I offered the menu to her. "I like the children's menu." Madison flipped through the menu and opened the children's menu page. "I'll have this one." She pointed her finger at the children's omelet as usual. "You really like omelets, don't you?" Seeing Madison's smiling face, I chose what to eat. Even though spring was almost there, it was still chilly. I decided on seasonal pasta. After placing an order on the touch panel, the two of us headed to the drink bar. Madison chose orange juice and I had tea, and went back to our seats. I wonder if Grandma knows that I like omelets. Of course. It was a casual conversation, but my face was relaxed. "Oh, Madison, you should go to the bathroom before your meal." Madison always wanted to go to the bathroom while eating, so I urged her to go before it. "Yes." With a cheerful reply, Madison headed for the bathroom. I didn't know if she's looking forward to the omelet, but she seemed to be light-hearted. Her appearance from behind was also adorable. Omelet was brought to Madison when she returned from the bathroom. But she didn't have it. "Is she waiting for my order?" "You can eat first." I called out, but Madison looked at me in confusion. At that time, the waitress brought me my pasta. Perhaps seeing that Madison had not had the omelet, the waitress spoke to me in a strong tone. "You have to make sure you eat what you order." Would you normally say such a thing to a customer? I was surprised, but I often heard that food loss had been a problem, so maybe she was being told from her boss to approach like that. It was useless to snap at her poorly, so I responded with a low posture. "I'm sorry, I think she was just waiting for my order to come." "I'll make her properly." When I looked at the waitress apologetically, she blew out a breath from her nose, and then walked away. She is a tremendously beautiful woman, but what a person with a bad attitude. I was stunned, but I picked myself up and called out to Madison. "Let's eat." However, Madison kept her head down and didn't have the omelet. "Madison, what's wrong?" Something was wrong. When I realized this, the waitress came to our table with something in her hand. It's a toy that comes with a child set. To put it bluntly, she placed the capsule on the table. The toy was next to the cash register, and it was supposed to be a system that children spin by themselves in exchange for coins. That hadn't changed since I was working. I remembered the last time I did it with Madison after the checkout was over. Something was wrong. I took the plunge and looked at the waitress's face to ask her. She looked at Madison with a faint smile. It wasn't a smile that seemed to be caring for a little child, but an eerie one, as if she was plotting something. At the same time that I was horrified, Madison must have sensed something. "I don't need this." As she said that, she threw the capsule on the table to the floor. Normally, she would never do such a violent thing. And if she did that, I would scold her, but this time the situation was different. There were also eyes of other customers, so I tried to appease Madison by saying, "Hey, you can't do such a violent thing. and tried to pick up the capsule that was thrown. But at that moment, "Grandma, let's run away," cried Madison, grabbing my arm as I tried to pick up the capsule. "What are you talking about?" When I looked at the discarded capsule, the contents had popped out. It was like a piece of paper. "Grandma." "No." Without even hearing Madison's restraint, I looked inside the folded piece of paper and shuddered. There were a lot of sutra-like characters written on it. "What's this?" Speaking of which, the suspicious phone call that I had when I was with Madison at Colin's house was also heard the moment I answered it, and a voice like a sutra was like a spell. I wondered if it had anything to do with it. Perhaps thinking that something was wrong, the store manager came out from the back of the restaurant. "Customer, do you have any troubles?" He lent me his hand as I crouched down. At that moment, a piece of paper in my hand seemed to catch his eye. "This is..." The store manager also looked uncomfortable. Anyway, I stood up and explained the circumstances of the matter. The waitress who brought the capsule was silently glaring at Madison. "I'm sorry." The manager apologized, but the woman didn't take her eyes off Madison. It would be a big deal if any harm was done. I hugged Madison and called out to her. "The manager is apologizing, but there is nothing from you." I tried to be as careful not to offend her as much as possible, but I guessed I was at the limit of my patience. The tone became a little harsh. I didn't know if it was triggered, but the woman suddenly shouted loudly. If only it weren't for her. At the same time, she tried to grab Madison. She tapped her nails at me, who immediately protected Madison and yelled, "Move out. Let go." The manager tried to stop her, but her power was so great that he seemed to have been unable to suppress it alone. Several waiters who had heard the commotion took the woman into custody, and someone who was smart enough to tell me that they had contacted the police. Madison was frightened and burst into tears. "I'm sorry, Madison." I held back the clawed spot and hugged her trembling little body. Before the commotion could get any louder, Madison and I were ushered into the family restaurant's office. That woman was with us. "Becky, why did you do that?" The store manager seemed to ask her about the situation, but she refused to answer anything. "I'm really sorry." He apologized to us again. It's hard to be a responsible person. While I was thinking about such things in a daze, the police eventually arrived. Becky, 33 years old. We were interviewed individually, but I knew her name because we were in the same room. I told the police that Becky was overbearing to the fact that Madison didn't eat the omelet, and that she had given her the capsule with the suspicious piece of paper. Then Madison, who was listening next to me, grabbed the sleeve of my cloth, saying, "Grandma, it's different." I asked, "What's wrong?" but Madison seemed hesitant. "Madison, can you also tell me about it?" A young police officer spoke kindly to Madison. "I saw it when I went to the bathroom. That woman was putting shrimp in my omelet." Madison testified tentatively. "It was a fact I didn't even know." "That's why you didn't eat it." It sounded like Becky had clicked her tongue. The young police officer didn't seem to be in the right place. She is allergic to shellfish. Perhaps he finally understood, so he called out to the manager and the two of them went to see if there was any omelet left. It's a shame, I'm sure it's already been disposed of. After the two of them left the office, Becky, who had been silent for a long time, turned to talk to me. She crossed her arms and legs in a haughty manner, and looked down on us. Can you answer our question as well? The police officer who was interrogating her sighed in dismay. So I don't have anything to say to you. I'll keep silent. Becky fell silent again and began to play with her loosely permed hair boredly. Her demeanor changed abruptly when the manager and the young police officer returned to the office. In the hand of the police officer was a plate of untouched, cold omelet. What? Becky had eyes that could see incredulously. In the presence of a police officer, the manager broke the omelet and showed it. Inside, there was not only shrimp but also crab meat used for crab cream croquettes. Does this restaurant's omelet also contain shrimp and crab? The police officer asked the manager, probably to confirm. No, they don't. The manager seemed disappointed. Everyone in the room turned their gaze towards Becky. Becky looked down, not even a slight movement, but then her shoulders trembled. Becky? When the manager called out, a small voice leaked out. I thought she was crying, but apparently not. Becky was holding back her laughter. She looked up and finally began to laugh out loud. Ahaha, I'm really laughing. I got caught. It was a bouncy voice, like when a prank was revealed, and it was a joyful voice. Okay, I'll tell you everything. But instead, I'd rather have a handsome guy over there, not the old man. She pointed to the young police officer who interviewed us. Don't be a jerk. The police officer who was called Old Main admonished her. Oh, don't look so scared. Becky winked, but it didn't seem to work for the veteran police officer. What a woman. I could only stare at the scene in amazement. What Becky told so proudly was out of the ordinary and I couldn't understand it. She testified that she was Colin's ex-girlfriend. She was his colleague when he worked for the black company. Colin was treated as incompetent there, so he said goodbye to Becky. However, rumors of Colin's rise to prominence at his new job caught her in the air, and she approached him to get back again. And yet, Becky didn't seem to think in the slightest that she had done anything bad. I tried to get him back together with me, but he refused. She snorted. That was how it would be. Colin had already married Olivia and Madison had been born. I thought that if I could have a child somehow, he would choose me instead of such a plain woman. She was talking about it like, you can understand, but I was sure no one was sympathetic. Becky began to monitor Colin and Madison's behavior without them noticing, and harass them if she didn't like something. Deliveries and suspicious phone calls that I didn't remember and had received were also her work. Eventually, when I started taking Madison to this family restaurant, she started working there and got to know the tastes and allergies of Madison. I was horrified. I even regretted that I had casually uttered about Madison's allergy. I hug her tightly as she leans against me. I thought I could finally get my chance today. Becky, who confessed everything, sighed regretfully. When she was done, the police officers took her out of the office. At that moment, I saw that she was glaring at Madison and smiling creepily again, and I felt a tightness in my arms to hug Madison. After apologizing for the inconvenience caused to the people in the restaurant and thanking the person who left the omelet without discarding it, Madison and I went back to Colin's house. I waited for Olivia and Colin to come home and told them about what happened today. That woman, such a thing. Colin clenched his fists and trembled with anger, but Olivia gently wrapped his hand around her hand. I've heard about her, but she's a terrible woman. It seemed that Olivia had heard from Colin. If only I had rejected her more strongly. No, it's not your fault. I should have been more careful. I left it to my mother-in-law and even made her feel scared. Both Colin and Olivia blamed themselves. Same for me. I wondered if I would have been able to properly protect Madison while keeping her. In the heavy air, Olivia finally spoke. Anyway, I'm glad Madison is safe. That's enough. In order not to repeat the same thing, we talked and Colin decided to move. Becky would face a heavy prison sentence for attempting to harm a child. Perhaps she was not convinced by that, but the appearance of her going on a rampage in a frenzy at the court was as if she was possessed by a demon. Olivia and I decided to renovate our home so that Madison would not be attacked by the demon again. Becky continued to cast spells throughout the prison, and it was determined that her mental state was no longer normal, and she was eventually transferred to a psychiatric ward. I was sure she wouldn't be able to get out of there. As I watched her go crazy, I was somehow convinced. However, we still needed reassurance. The Collins came to the house with security measures in place, such as security cameras, alarms, and security guards to help if something happened. Olivia quit her job and switched to a part-time job with more flexible hours, spending more time with Madison. We would never make Madison feel scared again. I'm sure we still have the same feeling. Grandma, what are you looking so scared of? 5 years have passed since then. Madison, who will soon be in 5th grade, looks into my face. Oh, did I look so scared? I made fun of that and, let's get ready and go eat, changing the subject, call out to Olivia and Joanna, Madison's sister. Today is Saturday. Basking in the warm spring sunshine, we set out to walk. Madison walks with Joanna by the hand. Olivia and I stood side by side and continued to watch their backs.